A lot of news out of the entertainment sports capital of news, ESPN. Some drama, some not drama, some Stephen A. Smith, some James Harden. That's what we're going to start off with before we kind of move into, I guess, scaling worse stories.
Yes.
So we'll start with first, which is James Harden and Stephen A. Smith. There's a great video of the two of them. James Harden feeding Stephen A. Smith for an open three in practice. I'm not going to make fun of Stephen A. Smith for this because I guarantee you 99% of the country in front of James Harden would also do the same exact thing. Let's take a look at his form, though.
Come on, pin down. There you go. Come on down. Oh. This is bad. Here you go, play on our team. Can't win it. Hold on.
All right, so, okay. First off, it's not bad. Form's fine.
No, it's not bad.
It's flat. It's like Ray Allen.
Yeah, it was. But I wanted to kind of give a rebuttal to the first point. 99% of the country probably would do that, but 99% of the country don't talk about basketball as if they have never missed a shot in any day in their life.
You miss all the shots you don't take.
Yeah, very true. So I think that Stephen A. Smith, some of his hot takes are good takes. Some of his first takes are first takes. Some of them are second takes. I don't necessarily agree with them. But I did love that people gave him a taste of his own medicine on Twitter. One of the best reactions I see him. Stephen A. is like that uncle who tells his nephew he's still got it. It's so true. He's like, I can take you no problem. Give me
Yes, that's true. That's my own father, by the way. My dad tells me to this day that he can kick my ass at basketball. It's just by pure facts of age. Man can't even get to half court, and he thinks he can beat me. It's like, I can take two dribbles.
I just think it's a dad. Like, when dads become dads,
Pride.
I feel like someone just comes and gives them a list and like, here's the things that you just have to do now, right? You have to be unbearable when trying to keep up with trends.
Oh,
you have
God,
to,
that's so true.
Yeah. You have to make sure that you tell your son that he will still never beat you at sports that you could never
Fact.
take unless you're auction. You must think that it's some point acceptable to wear your phone on your belt without having it in your pocket. You must love New Balance shoes because they will guide you through life. And you must make inappropriate jokes about the kid's mom in front of the kid and think that it's okay.
New Balance shoes?
I do, but I like the hipster ones. Not the Steph Curry shoes.
Raspberry, man.
Raspberry shirts.
First of all, Stephen A. Smith's, I love the reaction. This is bad.
Yeah, that was funny. At least he was honest
A moment
about
of self-awareness. By the way, so he went on Twitter. He had some fun with James Harden. He said, "Oh man, please, Stephen A. Smith, stick to your day job at First Take," and continue to say, he quoted him a few times, "Please, people, it's Valentine's Day. Show Stephen A. some love." Really, bro? And then, in all seriousness, great time shooting around, good conversation, good vibes. You got me. Best of luck to you. What I actually find so interesting about this is, what's it called, the fourth wall? Fourth wall kind of gets broken because Stephen A. Smith has trashed James Harden in the past, has also praised James Harden in the past. So obviously they get together, they do some fun shooting around, and there's a way to separate the hot take media from the person himself. It's not like, I guess this crosses over into what I see politically on the news, is like, you think that when someone's talking politically, that just represents who they are altogether, and then every single view they have you can't find any common ground. I'm sure they found common ground over some things. Maybe not James Harden's defense, but I'm sure they did. It's not the only stuff from ESPN, though, Francis, because, and like I said, scaling order. We have Steve Young now, right? Steve Young, Monday Night Football commentator and broadcaster with ESPN. He's been with ESPN for longer, pretty much, than he was even a quarterback in the NFL. 17 years are about the same, as he said. There's a profile on Bloomberg's website. And there were some interesting quotes that make us consider if Steve Young likes football, likes broadcasting, or likes his job. Here's the profile quote from Alex Sherman. Young says he may have quit ESPN years ago if not for his private equity partners who like him to keep a high profile. When he works a Monday night game for the network, he spends no more than an hour or two at the stadium preparing his commentary. He says the rest of the time he's holed up in the HGGC suite, which is his foundation, cramming for deals. Once the game starts, he barely watches the action. A couple of transactions, he notes, have been agreed to with handshakes in the suites. That, to me, isn't surprising. This, to me, sounds like man who does business wants to do more business through high-profile business jobs.
Yes.
So, and then the quote from Steve Young itself, though, which makes there was a little bit of outcry, and then Steve Young eventually went and defended himself on Bloomberg a couple days later. So here's the quote from Steve Young. "My wife hates football. My kids don't really care. I see myself as a deal-first guy. I've put football behind me. Roger Staubach once told me, and I'll never forget it, when you retire, run. Never look back. So this is interesting because you played at a professional level. Therefore, you understand the competition that you played against, and you don't necessarily need to prep if you want to talk about the day after you stopped playing professional football and you wanted to be a commentator for your team, right? The day after, or even 10 years after, but it's that team, same coach, you know the culture of that league, you know what the locker room's like. You might not need to do the same amount of prep. But it doesn't seem like Steve Young really likes football, and you do really like your football.
Yeah, it's an interesting sequence of events that's played out because you're led to assume that these guys who often move from the professional sport into broadcasting, it's because they want to remain part of the game, right? Like Shaq on TNT, you can tell he loves his job. Charles Barkley loves his job. Kenny Smith loves his job because they don't want to let go of what was great to them, and that's honorable. Like it's not going to replace those moments on the court, but it's because they love the game and they still want to have an influence and they still want to make themselves known. I think that's part of the reason why Charles Barkley likes to light a fire under everyone's ass, because he wants to remain part of the game. He wants to be like, no, I still have importance, right? And that's something that an athlete has to toy with in their head. We've talked about this so many times. Like, what do boxers do? Because there's a limited amount of boxing analyst jobs after they leave. So how can they contemplate moving from something they love to something else? And sometimes it's very hard. But in this guy's situation, he's got the job that most people would dream of having after moving away from the sport, because he still gets to be in the environment, still gets to watch the game, still gets to talk about it. But it's sometimes so hard. I don't scrutinize him for this because he's got a job that pays his bills and helps boost investments. On paper, it looks a little bit shady. It looks like he's just doing it for his own personal agenda. But at the same time, you have to understand that maybe being part of that environment wasn't all that it was made up to be for him. Maybe he does want to let go of some of it, but he wants to also keep making some money. Maybe football brings back some harsh memories for him. Maybe it's not as glorious and as magnified as people actually think. That's why I was struggling with this, because it's an instinctive reaction to be like, what a spoiled guy. Like, he was a professional football player, and then now he gets to go on camera and talk about it. Like, give me a break. I'm in the shipyards. I'm doing hard work. You know, I would love to have a job like that.
I actually love that you just mentioned the shipyards, because I think that's funny, because a lot of the people who were going after on certain websites and on the social media Steve Young for maybe not liking his job probably don't work in the shipyard.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, that age-old comparison, like, and if you do work in the shipyard, by all means. If you're working a labor gig, by all means, criticize the dude. If you're 10 hours a day lifting crates Cinderella Man to get your day's pay, by all means, you're better than desk jockeys.
I'm speaking from an experience.
You worked in the shipyard?
I remember I told you that. I have a mechanical engineering degree, which shocks a lot of people, but it was awful. It was, I almost...
So why does the desk keep falling apart?
Whenever I need to think about something that gets me into like a sad moment, if I'm doing any sort of work, I think about my Sunday nights in Scotland before work on a Monday morning, and I could probably make myself cry. It was so... And I don't mean to give anyone who works at my old job any sort of discouragement or making fun of that aspect. Like, if you do the job and you make a paycheck, that's why I'm so blessed that I'm able to do this every day, because in comparison to what it was like, that was horrendous. I hated it, but it wasn't just because that. I was bad at it. This is why the desk falls apart. I'm bad at fixing things. And I was in a job where I was expected to fix things on Type 45 destroyer ships that were going out to sea and potentially to be used in war, if God forbid we had to go to war.
What's it like having like the 9th best Navy? I don't know what you guys are.
Thanks to me. Guys like me are working on it. No wonder. We have bolts falling apart.
33rd best Navy. Where does Scotland rank in Navy?
Jason, we're part of the UK Navy. Come on.
No, you're not. You're part of the Scottish Navy.
You need to... Have you heard of Google?
No, never. I was going to say, you're telling me your submarines don't have one Scottish flag on them? The ones that were made by the Scottish? That is a Scottish submarine.
Well, it's a good point you made. We actually have the biggest nuclear base in the UK is in Scotland. We want to get rid of it, but they don't want to let us.
They left the craziest ones in the UK with the nukes underneath their fucking land. One bad golf outing. Fuck it, we're blowing up the rest of the country. We need new courses. Okay, so yeah, I agree with you on this one though. So by the way, also some people don't need 7 hours to prep a show.
Yeah.
But, and also the other idea is some people work for a paycheck and that's it. They do their job, they come in, they work for their paycheck, they leave, they go home. It's like shocking to some. How I can see where there was some anger is that, like you said, we love what we get to do. We are blessed for what we get to do. We worked hard to get to these points, but we also did, I mean, I wasn't working in the shipyard. I worked some shitty jobs in my life too. Regardless, it's not the end of ESPN's drama.
Yeah, there's another one.
ESPN's also getting sued, and I'm curious if we are separate on this one, or at least differing opinions. So Doug Adler, who's a broadcaster for the Australian Open and works for ESPN, was relieved of his duties for the Australian Open during the time, and possibly relieved of his future tennis duties with ESPN. That's up in the air based on appeals and the fact that he's suing ESPN for this. So here's the context as to why he's suing in regards to a statement he made, or a piece of the commentary he made about Venus Williams. Tennis broadcaster Doug Adler, who didn't return to ESPN's Aussie Open, broadcast after commentating on Venus Williams' gorilla, 2 different words, style of play. Yeah. That's the big question here. Has sued ESPN and 2 ESPN executives in charge of tennis broadcast in LA's Superior Court, alleging wrongful termination, emotional distress, and other damages. The quote that I pulled from Deadspin and part of the article that they pulled it from, to buttress his claims, Adler argues that gorilla is commonly used term in tennis, which I actually don't think he's wrong. He points to Nike's Gorilla tennis commercial featuring Andre Agassi, in which Agassi and I think it was Pete Sampras in the 90s, gorilla isn't used as a descriptor of play, but rather the act of playing tennis tennis anywhere but on the court. 2 columns by longtime tennis writer and current tennis magazine senior editor Peter Badeau that used the words. Gorilla alleges that many other tennis commentators and writers use this to describe aggressive tennis players. Now, why this came under fire is because the immediate reaction was, he said, we're going to see that gorilla style of play coming from Venus Williams charging after a serve went awry. That's according to the analysis as to how she's going to jump back into the match and get back on top. So it sounds like he's calling her a gorilla, the animal, when he's really referring to her and the style of play. Yeah. I don't know if you can say anything that could be slightly taken as a racist remark without Big Brother company, in most cases, having to crack down, because it seems like this is one where Twitter and social media actually got to ESPN again.
Of course. It's a sensitive time, and there's a lot of times where people will say something and it'll be taken out of context. There is examples where people absolutely have to be held to what they said.
Agreed.
I think I'm with you on this. I don't think this is one of them. I think that it is another example of not oversensitivity, but not giving someone the opportunity to really explain themselves, right? If he was able to be given the chance to come on air later on, or maybe even the next day, and be like, just so you guys are aware, I understand the outrage if you thought I said gorilla, and the fact that he said charging after it, that doesn't bode well for him. But while I understand that was what people may have thought, I didn't mean it that way. I was referring to this. Guerrilla, as in guerrilla warfare, as in, if you Google the word, referring to actions or activities performed in an impromptu way, often without authorization. And when you think about that in the tennis context, charging towards the net, charging over the court, not playing by the same rules as their opponent. Yes. That makes sense to me. But the way this environment works, the way that African Americans are often scrutinized so unfairly, you do understand that why that would be taken out of context without an explanation. So there is 2 parts of it. It's ESPN. It's not the people who complain straight away's fault. They have every right, if they thought that upset them, to complain. But it's ESPN's job as a company to give the man the opportunity to be like, this is not what I meant. And if this wasn't the first example, if he had a long history of maybe using some derogatory terms, which according to research he hasn't, then then you can maybe look into it, did you or did you not? Because it's all open interpretation. But as much as there's many examples where, if you've heard me, whether it be here or on the main show, protecting African-American athletes that have been described in such negative ways, this for me doesn't speak out as one of those examples.
Right, and that's so. What frustrates me is that ESPN is quick to do this with a lot of former. If you go against their grain, they're going to let you go, and then most likely get hired by Fox Sports. It seems to be the trend. That's what was happening. However, you'd want your company to have your back. I would think, and I would hope, that if I ever misstepped or misspoke, and it actually became a viral thing, because I'm sure I've misspoke in the past, but it just has 3,000 views on YouTube, and no one cares.
But you never know. It could.
Well,
you never know.
But it could happen to anybody. I would think that, considering it's not happened in the past and there's no trend or pattern of it, I would hope that my company and the Young Turks would say, look, you got to go on and explain yourself, but you're not getting fired for this, unless it was so heinous. But I don't think that's ever going to come out of my mouth. I don't think anything that heinous would ever come out of your mouth. You got to be able to speak. Freedom of speech, that to use that term and that right means you have to also be accepting of what you might not agree with has to say. And in sports broadcasts, it seems like now everyone has to become a Joe Buck, which pretty much means 1st and 10, Brady throws it right, 3 yards. 2nd and 7, Brady hands it off to Blunt, 4 yards. 3rd and 3, like, you can't, the whole point of what makes some sports commentary so great, like that of Kevin Harlan, is the excitement of it. And if you have to constantly monitor and censor what you have to say, in this case, and you can get fired for it when you don't even mean what they think they are saying, is what got you in trouble, you have every right to also sue ESPN for it. Mm-hmm. But, by the way, guerrilla warfare, as we wrap this up, because we have to go, guerrilla warfare, where the term came from. Do you remember, like, in history where they used to line up and just march at each other and shoot each other? Guerrilla warfare is like when they're hiding behind trees.
Yeah.
Right? Geniuses. Who's the genius who thought, like, guys, hold up, big open field, this is not a good way to fight?
It's the same genius that thinks when, even further back, when they used to march at each other on horses, they sat at the back and they were like, I'll let that guy go to the front to take the horse in the face or the spear, and I'll just hang out.
What about Drummer Boy? He doesn't even got a gun! He just has to drum with flags and get fucking shot.
There's an arrow to him, man. Oh, Jesus.
At least give him a bow and arrow so you can, like, keep a beat and just...
All right, let us know what you think in the comment section below. Do you agree with us? Do you think that this was, in fact, a racist comment that was rightfully taken and resulted in the action of this correspondent being fired? On Twitter, Francis_Maxwell, Jason Rubin 91. We're more than likely going to respond on there because we are tweetaholics. Hit us in the comments, though, and we'll see you soon.